Welcome back. It's time for another Take Two with Therese at Altenew, and I'm doing a stamp focus today on the inked Lotus. And what a beautiful floral stamp set this is. It's one of the inked series, so they really lend themselves to watercolouring. They have those really sort of sketchy edges, and the flowers in this series are quite large, so they make a real statement on a card. I thought I'd do some watercolouring again today, and this time I thought I'd just share a really easy way to get a bold and fun look. And it's an older technique but a lot of fun, and it's ink smooshing. So it's as simple as adding your dye ink to a palette or a piece of plastic or something that's not going to absorb it. So what I've got here is the palette from Altenew, and I've just used the ink pad and smooshing it on the actual surface of that, spritzing some clean water over that, and then picking it up with a piece of acetate. And then just actually adding the colour to my card, or this is in fact a piece of watercolour cardstock from Altenew, and I'm just picking up the colour and adding it directly to the cardstock. If you want to mix your colours, it's as simple as adding them while they're wet, and then they will sort of combine. Just be careful which colours you do choose to try and mix though, because some will muddy up and turn a brown colour, unless that's the look you're going for. Otherwise it's as easy as drying in between the layers, and even though my colours weren't going to muddy up, I did dry between some of the layers, because that helps keep the sharper edges of that watercolour look, you know, the sharper edges of where the ink has been laid onto the paper. Now these colours I think turned out really well, but as it dried it still didn't have the depth that I wanted, and so I've come in with some darker colours again, and I'm sort of getting there now. I find it easier to sort of wait, and then you can always add more rather than add too much all at once, but it still wasn't dark enough. So here we go, really brave now, and this is actually the jet black dye ink. I haven't used this ink in a while because sort of the permanent ink has overridden it for me, but I thought I'd get it out today and use it as a watercolour. And I think that made all the difference here to my panel. I love the depth that gave. So I've got a side fold card here. Actually both my cards are going to be landscape today, and I've already cut my panel down, and then I'm actually wanting to stamp my ink Lotus over the edges. So I did add some scrap paper here because I didn't want to mess up the edges, and I have added some adhesive to the back of my watercolor cardstock panel just to hold it in place while I stamp my flowers down. I'm going to stamp 2 flowers here, and I'm using the Obsidian black ink, which is a pigment ink, and I find this stamps really well on the watercolor cardstock. But because I've got it in place in my MISTI, I could stamp it again if I needed to. I just didn't want to have to take the chance here. So like I said, I am going to try I'm going to stamp this off the edges of the panel as well. So I've just left the stamp in place, and this is my card base. I'm stamping directly on that, and I'm not worrying about the center of the flower yet right now. I wish I had have, but I didn't. You'll find out why in a moment. And I did create a mask with some stamping mask paper. You could use a post-it note or whatever you have to hand, and masked off the first flower so that I can stamp the second flower. And I have still got that piece of scrap cardstock in place between my card front and my watercolor cardstock. And basically I left my card front in situ so that I knew where I wanted it to be when I stamped the flowers, and that I would be stamping these flowers in the correct position on the front of the card. So what I'm going to do next is focus a little bit more on my panel here. I did have a couple of areas that didn't stamp perfectly, and I just used my Copic multiliner to fix that up. You could use a Sharpie marker, and I added some yellow to the center of the flowers with some direct to paper with the watercolor brush markers, and that worked beautifully. And because I'd used the pigment ink, I know that that's going to tolerate the watercolor. It's not going to bleed. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. What do you think? I want to know what you think, because I liked it much better without the overstamping, like off the edge. And often I really do like that as a technique, but not today. I think it was just too much with the panel that I'd made. I much preferred it like this without the stamping off the edge, but do let me know what you thought. So that's sentiment I did add to that as well, which is from the Blossom Wreath set. I did use that on both my cards today. That same stamp set has some really sweet sentiments in it. So what to do with this card front? I decided I didn't want to waste it, and I decided to actually add some splatters. So this is just my leftover paint that was on my palette, and I'm saying paint when I mean ink. It's the dye ink, but it works the same as paint. So by adding a bit of water, I was able to splatter a couple of the different colors across the front of my card. And I thought it needed one more flower just to fill that corner in a little bit. I just wasn't liking it with the two on the whole card front. And by covering up this flower here, you know, with the that was the one that I didn't stamp very well initially. Had I gone to the effort of using the mask twice, I probably could have just coloured this whole panel in and done something totally different, but I think I managed to save the panel by using the leftover piece of cardstock and fussy cutting that out, and then I could just pop it on top of the flower that wasn't stamped very well with some foam dots. And the sentiment there again is from the Blossom Wreath set. So don't forget to like today's video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's always heaps to see here. Till next time, bye.